Hello and welcome to Creative Sparkle. My name's Holly and today we're doing an art journal prompt list. So grab your art supplies and let's get crafting. Hello, thank you for joining me today. So I'm working in this book. You can see here that obviously no need to prime really, but the pages are quite thin. So for the first prompt, it is going to be to prime your page as needed. And I'm just going to pop that masking tape down the middle and use white gesso to prime, just because I don't like how thin the pages are and I want to have confidence that my other mediums will stay. So for prompt number 2, we're going to be using one colour in multiple shades to create a background base. So I've chosen these 3 Distress inks, Bundled Sage, Peeled Paint and Mowed Lawn, and I'm just going to use the blending tool to add those colours to the page randomly. I will be covering the whole page, and once that's done we can move on to the next prompt. If you don't have Distress inks, or if you didn't prime your page and you don't want to use Distress inks, whatever you choose I'm sure will be absolutely great. You could use paints and just blend them with a bit of water in between. I just chose Distress inks because it's not often I use them for a background, so I thought that's what I'd go for today. So once happy with your background, we'll move on to prompt number 3, which is to add stamping over your background. So I have this rose background stamp, and I'm just going to use some colour box ink in the colour Deep Lagoon, and I'm going to press that over there and then press the stamp onto the page. I did firstly intend to cover the whole page with this stamping. Unfortunately, as you can see here, I did make a bit of a mess because I pressed too hard on the stamp and there must have been too much ink on there. Not very organised. So I decided to try again and just do partially ink it up and then lightly press it onto the page. And I've come out with some kind of border on my page with the roses, so I think it looks quite nice and I'm quite happy with the result this time, so I don't need to restart. So for prompt number 4, we're going to use cardboard box and using that to add interest to your spread. So I have this serrated cardboard here and I'm just going to cut a leaf shape out of that card just so that I have some kind of nice shape, and I'm going to use both sides of that to add interest. So I've chosen a green paint and I'm just going to dip the card with the serrated edge down and then stamp that onto the page. And then once I'm happy with that, I am going to go in with a darker green and use the flat side of the leaf rather than the bumpy side and go over the same places that I've stamped, so hopefully it will look more like leaves. And I'm just going to use some tissue to take away the excess of the paint you'll see in a moment. If you don't want to do a shape like I've done, that's not necessary. You can just add some lines with cardboard. You could literally add cardboard to your page if that's what you want to do. So once happy with that, we'll move on to prompt number 5, which is to choose a small image or several similar and repeat over the page. So I have this stamp set that I have with some archival ink in black, and I'm just going to use these tiny little fairy stamps and stamp them over the page in that black, and you'll see that it starts to look a bit like a fairy forest. So that seems to be the direction my page is going this time. I'm just using a micron pen here just to fill in those bits that didn't quite stamp properly, and luckily I didn't have to do that for the rest of the stamps, so that's good. Don't worry if you don't have any stamps like mine, or if you don't want to do stamping in general. You could punch shapes with a paper punch or draw something onto the page, whatever you feel suits your page best. So prompt number 6 is to add up to 3 focal images that relate to prompt 5, so the previous prompt. So I found these fairies in my stash. They were a gift from a friend of mine. Shout out to Ginny. And she bought me these at Christmas time. So I'm just going to stick these down because they, I think, relate to the fairies quite well, and I think it just brings the page together and brings it more cohesive. So I'm sticking those down with some PVA glue, and I'm just using a tissue to blot them just to get rid of the excess glue afterwards as well. So once I'm happy with that, we'll move on to prompt number 7, which is to add a colour that is not yet present in your piece. So I've chosen to go with blue. I have these metallic pens, and I'm just going to add some shapes here and there, some lines, some magic coming from the fairies. So I'll add that around the page, and hopefully it'll look like there is magic coming from the fairies. And because it's metallic, I think that shimmer adds something for the fairies as well. So after that, we'll move on to prompt number 8, which is to add splashes or dots to your page. So I've chosen dots rather than splashes, and I have the Pearl Effects dots, and I'm just going to add them in pastel blue around where I've added the blue previously. And I'm going to do some small dots and then some big dots around those fairy squiggles to add the interest. So if you prefer, you could add splashes for your background. You could add some stenciling in dots, or draw some dots around the page, or just larger circles. Whatever you feel suits your page best, and whatever you have available to you will work great. So moving on to prompt number 9, we'll choose a word or phrase, print it out and use it as your title. So I actually made something up for mine. I just decided to print something out in the same font that I use for my videos, and it says a sprinkling of fairy dust, magical. And I decided to cut it out into a leaf shape like the leaves in the background. And what I'm going to do is use the same inks that I used on the background just to go over the title, just to make it more cohesive. And then I'm going to use the ink that I stamped with, the Deep Lagoon ink you can see here, and I'm just going to go around the edges just so that it is more cohesive with the page. And then once I'm happy with the outcome, I will use foam tape to stick that down onto my page, and I think it does fit quite well. I'm quite happy with the result. So after you've finished your title and added it to the page, we'll move on to prompt number 10, which is to finish the piece with a step of your choice. So you can just add what you want. So what I decided to do is to add glitter. So I have boxes of glitter, a lot of glitter, and I have chosen this white glitter, and I'm going to go around the border and add glue, and then add glitter around there. And then once I finish with the border, I decide that that's not enough glitter for fairies. So I'm going to add some glitter onto the wings as well, and a little bit onto the title, just to bring the page together. And I dust it all off, and once you'll see the wings, I've literally just added glue to them. So what I'm going to have to do is use a tool to scrape off some of the glitter, just so that you can see those black lines where the wings are, because I thought it would suit better. So I hope that you're happy with the result, and I will leave pictures at the end of the video as usual. If you do decide to take part in the prompts list, please do tag me on Instagram. I would love to see your creations with the hashtag Sparkle Prompts. And like this video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time, where we will turn your creative spark into a creative sparkle. Thanks.